because, man, I gave myself 1 day to finish FF15 on this blind journey playthrough we've been on for the last week or so to investigate whatever this monstrosity is. And I thought, right, 1 more day to finish everything off. What did I know? There was 2 dungeons that required keys of some description, which there's been no mention of from quest lines or dialogue or anything like that I've seen anywhere. It's like, where do we get the key? So my assumption, of course, is when you finish the game, you get the key. And I was aware of certain things that happen at the end game, like getting the flying car. And I was like, well, that must be the ultimate reward for completing all the things or getting all the royal arms. That will do something. No. No. I got the flying car really easily, like surprisingly easily, which made sense now because it's wonderful for traversing the world. And it's actually been surprisingly fun. Even though I can fast travel to places by not using the flying car and just going into the menu at the car and just being there instantaneously, it's way more fun to fly. It really is. It's so much more fun. So, of course, I had to paint the regalia in its wonderful golden shades so that it can fly right through the sky and warn people of my arrival. And then I was here. What do I do? What do I do? This was what I planned as my final day of the endgame. But endgame in Final Fantasy games is always a bit up in the air. Sometimes it ends up like Final Fantasy X, which is like, well, there is an endgame, but it's a lot of grinding. And the rule we always have with this journey is when it boils down to just grinding out levels to survive a thing, I'm not going to do that because that's just really boring from a stream point of view and my own mental health. And there's just so many other games to play that aren't asking me to just mindlessly grind. So we leave it there. Anything I can do is great. Like in FF10, it was like, if I can Yojimbo through these monsters, that's kind of fine. That's kind of fun. We'll do that. So I looked at my quest log, a billion things to do. So what gives? Well, my goal, of course, was to see what's just appeared on the map. So as we did to get the flying car, it's like some quests have appeared. Now we finished the game. So I was like, okay, let's continue down that road. Weird. Weird. So, of course, as the King of Light, as the Savior of the world, as the Crusher of the Darkness, the obvious thing that I should do is to inspect electricity pylons and light bulbs. Which is what I did, because I was of some level of convinced that would be something that would result in something. So the quest was the lady who runs the power plant in Lestalem needs help checking out stuff because she's too afraid to go outside because there's monsters and beasties. And essentially, she takes all the credit for you doing all the work. But I've got to be honest, from like a roleplay perspective, being the handyman who checks out the electricity pylons and comes and checks your fuse boxes, arriving in a flying car was kind of funny. I wish we could have uniforms for this, because the prospect of how inefficient and purely Taylor Swift pollution-wise this is like taking the private jet to land and just go, yeah, your light box is okay, and then clearly have the characters not really know if they know what they're doing, and the dialogue backs that up. It's like, I guess it's okay. I don't know. It's a box. It's a light box. Was really funny. But I did this purely on the back of this quest appeared on the map as like, you should probably do this thing. You know, it had the big icon. And it probably leads to something with the power plant. And maybe this reveals something cool, like keys. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's more of a little character development for the lady who's running the power plant. She's like, I can't keep taking credit for all your stuff. I need to get over this. I need to stop taking on so much work. My friend died to demons, so I've understandably got a thing to do, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's that then. So then it occurred to me, it's like, okay, I likely haven't explored the whole map. But one thing that has popped up is legendary weapons, or weapons of legend, which is a dude in Lestalem who I'd never met before, is now like, hey, I can make you the most brilliant weapons you can imagine, and they're way better than the DLC weapons, they're way better than the starter DLC weapons that you get and all this kind of stuff, but you have to defeat some mega enemies. That sounds pretty fun, actually. That sounds really, really cool. So I'm going to do that. This was really fun, but very hard, and it almost got me to grind levels. Almost it was at that border, but thankfully it does appear, weirdly enough, that the devs have considered people don't want to do that. So, for example, I had to fight a giant bird. That was okay. It was like a reasonable level, like level 50. But every single quest he gave me jumped the levels up of the enemy by like 30. And I was really worried we were going to hit an adamantoise situation again. Every time you do one of these, you get a mega weapon for one of the characters. Cool. And so I moved forward with this until I got to a level 120 Transformer Scorponok robot. I can't remember the timeline. Maybe Bex can check as when Transformers, the first Transformers movie, came out. Because I imagine it might have been around this time. Although these kind of enemies have appeared in Final Fantasy before. In particular, this Scorpion that I fought is very, very much like the Final Fantasy VII first boss. And so it's probably based on that more than Transformers, but it had a Transformers feel to it. This boss highlighted another problem with the combat system. Like, it really falls apart at late game. It's understandable why people overall hate it. I think it's fine for like 3/4 of the game. And then when they get to mega bosses and things like that, it utterly falls apart. And the problem here is there's just no way that I know of that you could possibly keep the party alive. And that becomes kind of a problem, considering like the limit breaks are tied to your party and things like that, which do great damage and you want them. Armature works well with the rest of the party, and you can't do that if they're dead. This Scorpion that I fought in this fort had an ability where it shot out lasers. And in my personal gameplay, as you guys know, completing all the Souls games, etc., I love these kinds of games where we learn the mechanics of the boss and we get around it. Is I understood how these mechanics started to work. Besides one mechanic, which was an AoE that had a very slight tell. I think the intention here is to point warp out, but often the signal, the cue for this ability happening is so fast. Unless you're already out, you're really not going to survive it, and it one-shots everybody. So that was the only mechanic I didn't really solve. I'm sure if I'd mastered the combat and there's some clues it's coming, I could have done it. But for the sake of our first pull, first kill situation, I didn't. Is that it had a laser that shot out across the floor and then it returned. And this just was 999 damage going out and 10k damage coming back as well. And none of the party could possibly survive that. And so they would all get eradicated every single time. But I personally learnt this fight. Like, I could see people were like lolling and peppy laughing because it's level 120. I think the level cap of the game is 99. So it's 21 levels above the cap. But they did a smart thing of not giving it a tremendous amount of HP. Very good. That was a really smart decision. It had way less HP than what I could see like the level 50 mobs had, the level 50 bosses, in terms of super bosses. It was really cool, and the mechanics made sense for the environment. I wish you could have line of sighted more. That would have made more sense, and you also really wish at this point you could control the party or give them like quick signals like run away or something like that, or gather. Something like that would have been really useful here, but we didn't have that. So there was a lot of Mega Phoenixes and stuff to get them back up on their feet. But in terms of personal play, by the latter half, once I'd had time to learn everything it was doing, I could solo this guy without unless it was the AoE ability, which I do have elixirs and stuff for, so I wasn't super mad about it. There were good parry opportunities. There were great ways of getting around the back of it. It was not super mobile. I gave this boss like a pretty high rating. The frustration came from just the rest of the party being unable to sort of accommodate things. It would have been nice if it was a bit like FF14 duties, where NPC characters are pre-programmed to deal with mechanics in some way. So they will automatically get out of the way of certain mechanics instead of just mindlessly attacking a training dummy, but it's not there. That's fine. That finished that up besides Prompto's gun. Everybody got a new weapon except for Prompto, and I thought, that's a little odd, so there must be something else to get Prompto a weapon. So I don't know what that is. But, again, more quest markers on the map. So I traveled north, and apparently this piece of content was added much later to the game. It's a hunter's town that's been added near a bridge. It's a very small settlement. And in there, I got another quest to visit sort of a Siren that was lurking near the lake. And I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. Let's go and check out this Siren. This was for Prompto's gun, but I didn't know that at the time, obviously. This was the best fight I've done in the game so far. And I've said that a couple of times, but when you find a new king, it's great. Or queen in this matter. The way this fight worked had the best audio cues for what she was doing. She actually had dialogue, very much like a raid boss, of what she was doing. It was like, hold still. As she screamed, hold still, she was about to do a frost breath across the front of her axis, which you could get around. She had another very difficult AoE mechanic to get out of and often resulted in my death, but it didn't kill you instantly. which meant you did have time to sort of reposition the camera, find a point warp location to get out of it, because it was a gravity attack that pulled you all together and just ticked you down. So on several occasions, I started mastering that as well. And she had some great parry animations. She also was very vulnerable to, if you managed to pull off successful parries and breaks, that you could get her on the floor and you could point and do significant strike link damage. This was really cool. And also, it was the first real DPS check, like a specific DPS check that I'd met in the game. So far, if I've encountered it, I've killed it. This was the first time I fought something that despawned because the timer had run out in terms of it being nighttime. You can only find her during the evening, and if it reaches morning again, she just despawns. And I was on like 30% of her health left. I was like, God damn. I need to be, and this is just your strategy, right? Which again, my nerd style, my raid style, all that came in. It's like, right, I need to adjust to be way more aggressive, but I know her mechanics now. I need to get a proper food buff. There's none of my weapons seem to be vulnerable to her. So it's like, what is the most effective weapon? How can I utilize the team better? All these thoughts started running through my mind, and I was like, this is really fun for me. Really, really fun. You do still take a lot of one-hit damage. That's fine, because we do have the potions and things to back it up. But on the return visit, I got fully prepared and actually was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I strategies are forming. It's like, okay, I'm going to hit her with the parry, which should get her into a vulnerable, where I'm going to drop her, I'm going to drop the link strike onto her. And then when she comes out, I'm going to wait for a specific cast so I can use Armature, because she had Petrify. So if you timed it wrong, she would just petrify you mid-Armature, so you lose the big effect of it. So it's like, right, wait for a specific cast like the Frost Breath or the Poison Snakes, and then we'll go with the Armature in order to maximize the potential uptime of that, and then we'll weave in a limit break in the middle of that using Gladio's Impulse, which just does it hits twice. So I haven't earned the Ascension points to break the damage cap on limit breaks, so the max they hit is 10k, but Impulse hits multiple times, so it hits for multiples of 10k. So that was really cool and really wiped her out the second time. Best fight so far. Absolutely amazing fight. So loved this. I've done all this stuff. This took me hours, right? This was many super bosses. This was lots of exploration, lots of things like that. I still have no keys. And not a mention of keys anywhere. What the hell, game? So frustrated. So, I then counted, and I'm still missing 2 or 3 royal arms, which obviously I'm assuming are in these locked dungeons. So I'm like, what the hell? So I was obviously no help coming from the live chat of what to do here. And I was like, guys, I'm kind of getting to the point where I might need help or to Google something to figure it out, which is what obviously, and I'm aware of this, and we always make this point, is yes, if I was playing solo at home, I would have Googled these ages ago. But that's not part of the fun of what we're doing on a blind playthrough. It's like, and I'm also learning, it's like, does the game hint at what you should be doing? And so I was like, what logical process can I go through? I was really at the point of breaking when I was like, okay, hang on a minute. In my parking spot list of fast travel, so once you visit a place, you can fast travel to it later if you've discovered it. There are several parking spots I've apparently not been to. So I was reading through them. It was like, blah, 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 truck stop. That's not very good. But then I saw one that was a mine. I was like, okay, a mine could have a dungeon in it. So where is the mine? And it does show you where the parking spot is that you haven't been to yet. So I was like, okay, I'll go there. This was correct. This turned out to be a Royal Arms dungeon. And it was also apparently somewhere that 99% of people do as like their first dungeon. It's like a level 3 dungeon. But for whatever reason, the game hadn't pointed me there. I'd probably driven past it. But apparently not, because I would have loved to discover the parking spot or whatever. But found that one, got another Royal Arms. Okay, let's continue this process. So I'm looking around, and I'm looking at the parking spots and looking what's around them. And thankfully, the map is uncovered. So you can see there's a building near that parking spot that kind of looks like a royal tomb. Perfect, we'll go there. Got another Royal Arms. And then I was like, okay, we've got 12 out of 13 Royal Arms. This reveals a lot of information. One, the 2 dungeons that I know that need keys to enter are not Royal Arms dungeons. Okay, that's something else. What else? There most probably is another Royal Tomb somewhere on the map that will give me the final Royal Arms. And perhaps that then uncovers a quest to get the remainders. Maybe there's hidden Royal Arms, whatever's in these dungeons that I can't get into. And so looking around again, I spotted another place that was like, okay, that looks like there's something nearby and we should go and check that out. And I did. My God, dude, I ended up at Pandemonium from 14. It was a giant tower glowing red. I was like, okay, can I go in here? Yes, I can. This was apparently one of the first real endgame dungeons, which goes deep, deep, deep below the ground with lots of high-level enemies, tons of high-level loot, and a long way in. Like this, I was in here for maybe 2 hours before I hit the quote-unquote bottom of it, where I'm then presented with a puzzle. Now, I didn't finish it in the time I had on Friday, because we were playing a game called No Rest for the Wicked. You guys should check that out. It's one of the most anticipated RPGs of the year, and it looks phenomenal. So I was going down there, and then there was these, like, blocks that you stood on, and they would weave and interweave and take you deeper and take you to these big rooms where you could crawl through. And another locked door! I now need 3 keys. However, this one's different. You could then take a pillar back up top, and another area would activate. So... this is where I am. I'm going to give it one more day. But that's it. I'm giving it one more day. Because there's other things I want to move on to, including like FF2 and 5. So I'm going to give it one more day, because I know this endgame, I already feel this can go on forever, because I haven't even done the endgame hunts yet, which just keep going and going and going. I think there's probably a good 20 hours of post-content here. So I'm going to give it another day to try and find the keys. That's my goal. I just want to find the keys. Once I know the keys work, I'll be a happy boy. So I'm going to finish out this dungeon, and then we'll go where the wind takes us, so to speak. But that's where I'm up to. So thank you for listening, guys. We're giving it one more day. Just give me a goddamn key game. I'll be so happy. I'll see you again. Bye, guys.